Welcome back. In this session, we are going to understand deployment in the Kubernetes. So let's start from the previous session. So in previous session, we have understood how ReplicaSet keep pods live. So we are able to maintain a certain number of pods all the time. Well, this is one of the requirement when we are running our production application, but in real time, we need more than that. Now let's understand some of the other requirements. One of them is, as a developer, you are expected to deploy newer version of application several times in a day, right? So when you are working on the application, then you are doing the new feature release, you are doing something new changes in the application, and you want to update this new feature and new version of the application maybe multiple times in a day. And this is especially needed when we are running an environment like Kubernetes and the container, right? So deployment become quite easy, quite simple. But here is the problem. So when you are going to deploy your application multiple times in a day, same time the user who is accessing the application, so they are expecting application to be available all the time. They don't want any downtime, right? So what happen when you go and deploy your newer version of the application? There will be downtime, because when you're doing the deployment, then you are deleting your existing pods and creating the new pods. Then for certain period of time your application will not be available. But again, this is not ideal case, as I said. So user expect application to be available all the time. So how do we solve this problem? That's where we will use the deployment. So using the deployment, we will be able to version control our application infrastructure. Yes, so let's say if you are running the one version of the application and you are doing the update, and after update you feel, okay, this something got wrong, right? So you need to go back to the previous version. So that could be done with the deployment. Second is, we will be able to deploy or release new version of the application with zero downtime. And again, as I said, if something goes wrong, again we should be able to bring it back using a rollback option. And on top of that, if you want to seamlessly scale, this we have already seen in the previous session. So let's say if you are running 3 pods, now you need to make it 5 pods, right? So what we did in the last session, we have went ahead and updated the configuration file. But this another way, simplified way of seamlessly scaling the pods. We are going to understand this, and all these things will be done and achieved with deployment. So deployment is important. So in real time, when you are going to run your application in the production, so you will be using deployment, not a replica set. So now let's understand this practically. So again, what we are going to do, we are going to create the new folder in the our Kube8s labs, and with the deployment, and there we are going to create our deployment configuration. So let's go to the terminal, and let me go back here, and this is our folder, and let me do that. We have the deployment, and now here we are going to create this file nginx deployment. So let me touch this and vi nginx deployment, and let me copy this code and paste this, and let me explain this. So in this lab we have the 5 part. So first part, what we are going to do, we are going to deploy our pods using the deployment. And as I said, so deployment is exactly replacement of the replica set. So what we have did in the previous session, same things we can achieve with the deployment, and this is what we are doing in the part 1. In part 1, what we are going to do, if you remember the previous configuration, so here, okay, let me show you. So this was the replica set configuration, right? So we have the API version, then the kind was replica, right? Replica set. Then we have the meta data for the replica set, then we had the spec, right? Then the replica 3 selector and the template and the nginx, correct? Now here what you see, this is exactly same, and the only difference is as the kind we are using deployment. So in a deployment, even we can use the replica, right? So here you see we have the replica, right? So only difference here we are using the replica set, but here we are using the deployment, and every configuration is the same. So what I said, so in production environment we don't use replica set, we use deployment. So here we have the deployment, then we have the metadata for the deployment, then we have the spec. In this spec we have the replica. Here we want two pods to be running, then we have the selector to match label nginx, then we have the template for the our nginx container. So let's go ahead and apply this, and we can go ahead and see the deployment. And once it's create the deployment, okay, that's one interesting things here we can see. So now we see we have the deployment and the nginx deployment, and 2 by 2 is ready, right? And up to date is 2, available is 2. And now when we use the deployment, and in the deployment configuration, when we put this replica, then deployment also create a replica set. Yes, behind the scene it's create the replica set, and this is something we can check with this command, right? So we know if you want to see the replica set, we can run the command kubectl get replica sets. Now we see here we have the replica set. So what a deployment did, deployment created a deployment as well as the replica set, and this is how this is maintaining our number of pods. Now we see we have the two pods, and this was the expected. So let's clear it. So here what I was just trying to show you from the part 1, in Kubernetes when we use the deployment, then the deployment behind the scene it's used the replica set. Now you understood we really not need to use the replica set, so we can achieve same functionality, same feature what we did in the previous session with the deployment. Now we are going to the part 2, where we are going to update our existing configuration with the rolling update. So first is rolling update. So when we use rolling update, then pods will be updated gradually with zero downtime. So we will not have any downtime when we will use rolling update. And how do we do that? So inside our configuration we are going to add this code, and here we have two configuration. So here type will be the rolling update, then in rolling update we have two configuration. One is the max surge and another is the max and available. So what is max surge? Max surge is so number of additional pods will be created. So while this deployment, additional number of pods needs to be created, right? Because we want zero downtime, correct? So if you want zero downtime, and again if our replica is true, so how it will be achieved? To achieve this, there will be additional number of pods need to be created, but here we are defining how many additional pods you want to be created. So this is called max surge. So here we are putting 1, you can make 2, 3, whatever number you want, but just for understanding, max surge is maximum number of additional pods you want to be created on top of your replica set count. And then we have the maximum available, and that's we are saying 0, means we don't want any downtime. Okay, so max unavailable, so there will be always a pods running, right? So here 0, so there should be always pods running, so 0 downtime. So this is the configuration we need to do if you want rolling update. This another is recreate. So in the recreate means a strategy will be recreate, means it's going to delete all the old pod first, then it will create new one. And now you understood here. So if you are going to use this, means it's going to cause the downtime during this transition, and sometimes we need to do that because of some special use case, like if your application can't run multiple version of your application, right? In that case we need to use this deployment strategy. Anyways, let's scroll up, and here again code is as it is, but in the spec what we are using, the strategy, right? So what is our strategy? Strategy type is rolling update, and max surge is 1 and max unavailable is 0. So let me copy this and let's go ahead and update our configuration. So what I'm going to do, just I'm going to empty our code, echo, then nginx, less nginx. Okay, it's got empty. Let me open the vi nginx and let's put this code and save this. And now we have to go ahead and apply this. Again, I'm going to upload this whole document in the resource section, so you can please go ahead and download it and practice yourself. Now it's got created, but as of now, okay, now if you go and see, let's type here get kubectl get pods. So we will see our two pods are running, so there's no any changes. But what we did, we have updated the our update strategy, right? Now this is something we need to test it, so that's where we have the part 3 of this lab. So now what we're going to do, we are going to simulate the new version of the application deployment. So let's see here. If you see our in the container section, we are using image nginx 1.21.1 version. So we are using nginx image 1.21.1 version. Now what we are going to do, we are going to upgrade it with 1.23.1. So for that we are going to run this command. So command is kubectl set image deployment, which deployment, nginx deployment, and nginx image is this latest version. And once we run this command, so what Kubernetes is going to do, this is going to update the our running pods with the this latest nginx image, and then we can see using these commands. Okay, so kubectl rollout status deployment and the nginx deployment, we will see what this is doing. So let's go ahead, because now we have already done the configuration, so we can go ahead and test from here. So before I run this command, let me copy this so we can say it. Hit the enter. Okay, now this is updating. Now we can see here, we see deployment successfully roll out. So what happened? So a new replica set was got created behind the scene, and the pod was got updated one by one, and there was no downtime. We can go ahead check it. So let's go ahead and get this command kubectl get pods, and now we see we have the pods are running. And now again we can see our replica set. Now you see here we have the new replica set, right? So this one is the old one and this one is the new one. Now how do we verify if our application is running latest one? So we can go ahead and check our pods, and we know in pods we have the latest image, right? So let's do here. So here we can type kubectl describe, sorry there was the typo, so kubectl describe, then pod name, and now you see we are running the latest version, right? So 1.23.1, right? So now we are running latest version. Initial was 1.21.1. Now let's imagine there's something wrong, right? There's some bug. So what we can do now, we can go ahead and roll back to the previous version. So let me copy this. So how we can do that? For that we can run this command. So kubectl rollout undo deployment and nginx deployment. So let me clear the screen and run the command. So again this is roll back to the previous version. Let's go ahead and check this. Describe. Okay, now we cannot find this because it's deleted our previous pod, right? Because new pod got created. So type kubectl get pods, And now we will go ahead and check this. So let me copy this, kubectl describe pod. Now we see we have the, again we went back to the old version, nginx 1.21.1, right? So you see now is seamlessly got roll back to the previous version and so quickly. So this is really important, is amazing part of the Kubernetes. So now what we did, we understood how we can replace replica set with the deployment, then how to upgrade our newer version of the application without downtime, and also how to roll back if needed. Now next and last part is how to scale. So in previous session what we did, if you need to scale, we went and changed in our configuration. But if you don't want to do any changes in the configuration and want to scale from the command line, then we can run this command. So what we are doing here, we are saying okay, kubectl scale what deployment, our nginx deployment. Now set replica to 5. So currently we have the 3, right? So if you go and again let's double check here, so we have 2 pods running, right? So now what we are doing, we are scaling to the 5. So copy this, let's go ahead and run this. Now if you go and check this, now we have the 5 pods running. So without doing any changes in the configuration, we are able to scale our pods. Well, now again, if you want to scale down, we can again scale down to the 2. Again, the same command. Let me go ahead and put this, right, and get the pods. We see we scale down to the 2 pods. Well, so that's pretty much I wanted to cover here. So what we have did, so here we have understood that deployment is the standard way of running our production application, and the behind the scene it's run the replica sets, right? Then it supports couple of amazing feature like rolling update. If you want to update your application with the latest version, then we can also roll back to the previous version if something goes wrong, and we can scale with the single command. That's pretty much. So please go ahead and practice this. I have already attached this whole guided lab in the resource section, and once you are ready, see you in the next session.